Hello class, it's Miss Roberts here, and today I'm going to briefly show you how to complete both midterm and final papers. So with these two papers, the instructions are identical. One of the main differences is I'll give you a list of topics to choose from. Those are the topics that we have talked about thus far in regards to the midterm paper. And with the final paper, you'll have a full list of the topics that we talked about. So that's the only main difference. So even though I'm showing the midterm paper as an example, I'll briefly show the final paper as an example. And if you're revisiting these instructions for the final paper, it'll be okay to do so. So just get that out the way. Let's begin. Okay, so here's the midterm paper prompt. I'm just going to put myself up here. You'll find a set of questions. And like I said before, just a brief, but not, of course, not an extensive list of the things that we talked about thus far. If you notice, I'm going to switch to the final term paper prompt. You'll see that the list is a lot larger. Okay, so let me go back to the midterm paper. Now, the idea of both the midterm and final term papers is that we've gone through a lot of theories, and I want you to hone in on a theory or theories that resonated with you and something that you will use. This is a research paper. So just to begin on the basis of the research paper, you will be writing 4 to 6 pages double spaced. You can have a minimum of about 4 or 5 sources, 4 sources minimum. If you want to use more than 5 sources, that's fine. Some of these sources can include ebooks or books, scholarly journals, articles, newspaper articles, magazines, videos or documentaries, and personal interviews. One note about personal interviews, it does require outside research. Personal interviews are a little bit different because it's your primary research versus the secondary research sources that I listed previously. So you can't use all 4 of your sources being personal interviews. So make sure that those are balanced. If you want to have like maybe 3 sources that are written or video and a personal interview, that's fine. But just make sure to balance that out, just to make sure. So your textbook can count towards the research requirement. So if you want to include your textbook in that, that's fine. But I'm looking for at least 4 sources. Any sources less than that, or any number less than that, will result in point deduction. So I don't want you to have point deductions off the bat from less resources. So you're also required to incorporate in-text citations. In-text citations is when you get credit to the author and the source. And then you also have to have a works cited or reference page. A works cited page is the listing of sources in Malay format, and the reference page is the listing of sources in APA format. And later on, I'm going to show you a research called Purdue OWL and another citation generator source that can help you out with this requirement. So the works cited page and the reference page does not count towards the 46 pages. So I don't want anyone to get confused about that. So you have to have 4 complete pages and a reference page or works cited page. Okay? All right. So once you get that out the way, you take a look at the concepts that I have listed here. And say, for instance, with the areas of perception, that's a lot to put in the 46 pages. So you can focus on 1 or 2. Or say, for instance, you might not have enough to write about I statements, for example. So if you have a topic with a lot of information, try to narrow it down so it can fit the 4 to 6 page minimum. If you have a topic that may need to be fleshed out a little bit, you can combine it with either another term listed here or incorporate it to, add another topic or incorporate it with another thing. So with this paper, you are, move this out the way. With this paper, you have the freedom to choose your own topic in that way. So it can be based on the list that I have, or you can talk about another topic. If you do talk about another topic that's outside this list, you have to get my permission, only because I need to make sure that the topic that you talk about is connected to interpersonal communication. Okay. Okay. So once you choose your concept or concepts, you want to define and explain them. What is this topic about? So you're going to just talk about what it is. If you have the theorist or you have the person who came up with the theory, you can go ahead and talk about it. If not, that's okay. Then the next paragraph, you're going to talk about how can people apply this concept to their interpersonal relationships. So the first part of your body paragraph or paragraphs is just explain what concept you're going to dive into. And then once you do that, how can this theory be applied? Then finally, you're going to talk about if you agree or disagree with some parts of the concept. For example, I like the concept of I statements. However, with I statements, my language doesn't really fall in that category of I and this is what I think and this is how it affected me. So one of my criticisms of I statements is I would hope that it would be flexible to people's dialects and natural tone of speaking. So that would be my one criticism of I statement. So you can provide that criticism as well, or you might completely agree with the concept. If so, how come? Okay. Next up, so just to go back here, to receive full credit, your paper must answer the questions in paragraph format. So you're going to be writing in a traditional college essay format. You'll have an introduction, body paragraphs. The body paragraphs will answer these questions, and a conclusion to wrap it up. Okay. So you have to have in-text citations. If you don't weave in the in-text citations within the essay properly, then you can have a reduction of points. If it's less than 4 complete pages, I'm really sticking on this. I have people turning in 1 page, 2 page, 3 3/4 page, and you will see in your rubric that the page count is part of your grade. If I don't have 4 full complete double-spaced pages, points will be deducted. Okay. So overall, have at least 4 sources. You can have more than 5 if you want, but about 4 or 5 sources will suffice. Your book can count towards your sources if you like. You can use personal interviews, but don't completely use full interviews for all of your sources because you need to balance your primary source, which is your interview, versus your secondary sources, which are the listings of these sources here. One more thing before I go, I wanted to show you some of the formats and how to format that works cited page. So this is Purdue OWL. So this is the Purdue University Online Writing Lab. I will provide the links to these resources. APA format is one of the formats you can use. When we talk about in-text citations, if you see in this example, you can use something called parenthetical citations or weave in the citation within the text. So as demonstrated here, this is APA format. It's going to look a little bit different with MLA format. So see how this citation is incorporated into the paragraph? So you can do that. Or do it in parenthetical style with the citation at the very end. Note with long quotations, try to keep long quotations to a minimum, no more than 1 or 2. So I don't want the paper be full of block quotes, those more than 4-line quotations. So you can break it up, put into context, explain, but don't have your whole paper being long quotations because that will be borderline plagiarism and that will result in a reduced grade. Let me show you one more thing. This is a sample reference page. So this is APA format. I'm going to show you MLA format in a little bit. Just have to wait till this loads. And I'm going to scroll down to the reference page. So if you are going to choose, let me move myself over. If you are going to choose APA format, you can use this as a reference to your reference page. Notice that the top part is labeled reference. And you see the names of the sources in alphabetical order. Notice that they're using something called hanging indent, meaning that the first line of the entry is not indented, but any subsequent lines are. Many of you might be familiar with MLA formats. I'm going to show you around this site. So I'm going to move myself around. So MLA format is permitted as well. So you can click on the format and styling guide. Here's the paper format right here. So here's how they do in-text citations. It's a little bit different. With APA format, they put the year in with the author. In the MLA format, you don't have to do that. Let me move myself over here. Notice that the source, so Wordsworth is the source, is either within the sentence or in parenthetical citations, which is out here, so after the sentence. And the bibliography that you would do for MLA format is where it's called a works cited page. So notice again, we have works cited on top. We have the names in alphabetical order, and they use hanging indents. So the first line is not indented, but any subsequent line is, the first line is not indented, and any subsequent line, so the lines after that, is indented. And I have one more to show you. So one of the quick generator tools I use is Noodle Tools Express. We will not be using Chicago style here, but hopefully if you need to use Chicago style, this would be a good resource to use. So since we just started to talk about MLA format, say if I want to cite a book is the first part here. Let me move myself over here. So we have the drop down menu, we have the book, create citation. You can put in the chapter or section, the book. If it's an organization that authored the book, then that would be right here. Let me show my information right here. But you can click right here. you can put the title and just put in the information that you have. And when you press save, it's going to create a citation that looks similar to this. And all you will have to do is alphabetize your sources and put in order. Alphabetize and put it in order and use hanging indents. So again, I will, let me see. So if you do this, it's going to take you to home. So this is a free tool of theirs. So to find this, you're going to Google Noodle Tools Express. If you Google Noodle Tools, it'll take you to the screen I just showed, which is for pay site. You don't have to just search around for the free tools. So say if I did APA format, I click, I find the type. Let me move myself over. Scroll down. There are many different types of sources. But since I mentioned that you could do at least a personal interview or two, let me go to personal interview. Why not? So if you are going to use an interview, you can create citation. So if you conducted the interview, which you will, so you're able to put that there, put the name of the person. Now, because it's interpersonal communication, just one side note, some people might interview their parents or their sisters or brothers, right? Which is fine. You could introduce in the paper, hey, I interviewed my mother, but your mother, your dad, and your brother sister have a name. Oftentimes, especially in public speaking, this happens where my student is citing their personal interview as a source, and he or she will say, hey, my mama said this. I'm like, okay, well, what's your mom's first and last name? Okay. So make sure that despite, even though they're close to you, and if you want to use them as a personal interview, that's fine. But just make sure to give them a name. Treat them as the source they are. Okay. Okay. All right. So that is the overview of what's going on with the papers. You can also use this video as a reference to the final paper as well. Like I said before, both prompts are identical because both prompts are identical and they differ because of the scope of what we talked about. So the midterm paper has half of the topics that we went over because it's midway through the semester, and the final term paper has all that we talked about, and that's pretty much the only difference. Make sure you use the full college essay format, full introduction, answer the questions as body paragraphs, and provide a conclusion. 4 pages double space, at least 4 sources. Choose between MLA or APA format, and make sure your paper makes sense. And hopefully, if you and if you have any questions, let me know, and hopefully this won't give you a lot of trouble, but if it does, make sure to contact me and I'll be able to help you out. All right, thank you so much for your time and have a good day. Bye.